Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to our amazing commerce video. Today we'll be doing a Year 10 full course overview.
Full course?
Full course.
I wasn't told. No. I thought we
No,
were
well, no.
I've got my textiles.
You've got your textiles. You've got a script?
No.
Okay, good. Sorry. We'll get back into it. So we're going to be covering the 4 units that we looked at this year. We're going to be covering, I've forgotten the units, in reverse order, employment and work futures, our economy, investing, and then the legal system in Australia. If you happen to be a student at a particular school who's got a test next Wednesday in period 1 or period 3,
It's not me.
you are specifically looking at the last 2 sections of today's video, so you can just skip through till then. But if you're anybody else who's just really keen on this amazing commerce video, please have a watch the whole way through.
He's definitely right. It is an amazing commerce video because I've decided to do some editing and I actually put some effort into the business and my editing. So as you will see throughout the video, there will be some notes which have been requested a lot to us. I'm pointing up there, but who knows where it's going to be by the time I edit. Anything else to add?
If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm sure you're all already subscribed, but if you haven't, make sure to subscribe. We would really appreciate it. And if you do happen to subscribe, or even if you're already subscribed, please leave us a little comment down below saying, I subscribed. That would really be appreciated. Also, on some of our other videos, we've had some interesting comments, which we've really appreciated. Some people may have taken them as hate comments. No, we don't at all, but we'd really like some more. So please also leave your favorite hate comment down below, and we'll make sure to reply to them. Maybe even I'll make a video of me replying to hate comments, which might get a bit heated.
Yes, so if you wanted to see some of those supportive comments we got, look at the Macbeth Act 5 video. Actually, I got some positive reviews, but Jeremy had a bit of a hard time.
Yeah, I had a rough time.
So if you want to try, match that. If you can do better, I want him to cry. So, give him your best, give him your worst. And yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so we're going to start off first unit, the legal system.
That is right. We've split it into a lot of sub-points. Firstly, we'll start with reasons for laws and why do we have them. Quite simply, without a set of rules in society, there would be chaos. Rules and laws are created in order to maintain peace and create a sense of normality in society. There is a high emphasis on laws because of this reason, and therefore laws in a country can be enforced by a court of law. There are 4 main roles of laws. Firstly, they're there to establish boundaries.
They set standards for acceptable behaviour and determine actions which won't be tolerated. Secondly, for protection, they give protection of individuals from the actions of others, as well as our own behaviour, usually in the form of telling us what we can and what we can't do. So for example, you can't commit assault or drink and drive. I don't think Luke's grasped that last one just yet. Thirdly, they give us freedom, so they tell society what they can do as well in order, essentially like you can operate a business and you can drive a car, Luke can't. Fourthly, they're there to resolve disputes. In order to stop people from taking the law into their own hands, it provides a police force, court system, and correctional centres to do this.
Wonderful analysis, Jeremy.
Thank you.
So now we move on to Australia's court system and the hierarchy and role of the court. So the court system operates under a hierarchy. Each court deals with matters that they have jurisdiction over, with the most serious offences being done at the High Court and the less serious offences in lower courts, such as the local court. Furthermore, if an individual is unhappy with the decision by a court, they're able to appeal that decision at a court, in a higher court, except for the High Court, which cannot be appealed.
That's very true. Okay, so at the bottom tier here is the local court. This would be like if Luke was a court, and there are many of these courts around the country, and they deal with the least serious forms of offences. There is no jury in this court, instead a magistrate hears the case and then decides the verdict and sets any punishment. A magistrate can imprison an offender for up to 2 years per offence or 5 years total, and in civil cases they can hear claims of up to $100,000. This court normally hears minor civil cases and crimes including stealing, drunk driving and indecent language, so Luke spends a bit of time in those ones.
Next is the district court, which is the third tier or the middle court in the state system. These are heard by judges, however, in some cases the jury will decide a verdict, and that is up to the defendant to choose whether they want a jury trial or a judge alone trial. District courts deal with more serious civil claims, ranging from $100,000 to $750,000, and they also deal with all motor vehicle accidents. Its criminal jurisdiction includes crimes such as armed robbery and manslaughter, and the district of court also hears appeals from the local court.
Second tier is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in an individual state. So for example, it's the highest court in New South Wales and deals with the most serious criminal cases such as murder and treason. As well as this, it hears the most serious civil cases with claims over $750,000 being heard here. They also hear appealed cases from the 2 lower courts. The judgments of the Supreme Court are compulsory on all lower courts.
The top tier court is the High Court of Australia. This court is located in Canberra and deals with appeals from the state or territory Supreme Courts. It also hears cases concerning the interpretation of the Constitution. Basically, it reads, interprets, and applies the Constitution, and in reaching its verdict, it creates laws that affect the powers of Parliament. Because the High Court is the highest court, all of its decisions are final, meaning any decision will affect the whole country. The High Court consists of 7 judges, the Chief Justice, and 6 justices. And the cases are determined by them, meaning that there is no jury in the High Court.
Wow, and if you think back to a history video, you'll remember the Eddie Mabo case, which was actually settled in the High Court. So other than these courts, there is also a coroner's court, which investigates deaths by unnatural causes, the family court, which settles family law matters, and the drug court, which tries to provide long-term solutions to drug offenders.
So the next topic is looking at the difference between civil and criminal or tort law. This is quite a long topic, so,
Brace yourself.
Brace yourself, get ready. Quite simply, civil law is about resolving disputes between 2 people, such as defamation, whereas criminal law deals with matters between an individual and the state or country, such as murder.
Yeah, so next we're going to look at Australia's jury system. This is the last point on the law, society and political involvement topic. So here, whilst juries are used in less than 5% of all legal cases, they're still a crucial part of the legal system. A jury is made up of ordinary people, it's 12 people who are just randomly picked, and it's their job to decide whether they believe what happened according to the evidence that they are provided with. In a civil trial, they must also decide on the balance of probabilities whether the defendant is liable. So that means that basically on the balance of probabilities means which side is it more likely to be. But in a criminal trial, they must decide whether the defendant is innocent or guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
So thank you, Jeremy, so much for wrapping up the legal section. Now we'll move on to the investing section of this video. And to start, we'll talk about the investment environment and look at concepts of like risk versus reward and why people invest. In simple terms, individuals choose to invest their money with the view to build wealth. They have the goal to make money in order to invest more or to save to set themselves up in the future.
Yeah, a key factor of investing that we see is the rate of return. So this is the profit that you can expect to receive on your investment as a percentage of the original investment made. While investing, the main goal is to make this number as large as possible so you make the most profit possible, which, as we know, money is the most important thing. And there's actually an equation for this, and this equation is the rate of return is equal to the profit from the investment divided by the original investment times by 100 over the period of years of the investment.
Another important aspect of investing is weighing up risk versus reward. Every investment has an element of risk to it, with investments such as crypto being very risky, while investments such as bonds are regarded as a lot safer. However, often the higher the risk, the higher the reward. I came up with that quote. So investors have to weigh up how much they're willing to risk in order to make a big return.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a quick look at the types of investment. So there are 4 main types of investment, these being cash, fixed interest investments, shares, and property. These 4 types of investments can be split up into 2 categories, these being defensive investments and growth investments.
So to start, let's look at defensive investments, starting with cash. A cash investment looks like putting money into a high interest savings account. This is a very safe form of investment and provides a stable and regular income through interest payments. However, it can take a long time to make a sizable return.
Yeah, those interest payments of about $2 every 6 months are quite good. All right, so next we have fixed interest investments. So these include term deposits, government bonds, and corporate bonds. A term deposit lets you earn interest on your savings at a higher rate than a savings account does, but you do not have access to that money over the duration of the term. Bonds, on the other hand, are essentially loans to the government or companies who seek them for a fixed period of time and pay them a regular rate of interest. At the end of the period, the bond price is then paid back to the investor. But what we see with bonds is that they offer a very low rate of return because essentially they're very safe investments. You put money in and you get a little bit more when you take them out in the end.
Just before I go on, I just wanted to apologise. There will be no Candy Crush segment in this video. I know it was a big hit last time in the history video, but unfortunately, I've been forced to use my phone to film. So, yeah, no Candy Crush, but maybe next time. Clash Royale, maybe we'll do some Clash Royale. Anyway, now we'll move on to the growth investments, starting with shares. At the most basic level, a single share represents a single unit of ownership in a company and are generally bought on the stock exchange. The value of a share can rise and fall below or above the original buying price, and the prices can be volatile from day to day, and shares are generally considered best suited to long-term investors for this reason. And that is why they are considered one of the riskiest types of investments because of their volatility. And furthermore, if you own shares, you can also receive income from dividends, which are effectively a portion of the company's profit given to shareholders. Are you going to play your game and I'll continue?
Yeah.
Wonderful. The final main form of investing is property. This includes investment into things like residential property such as houses and units, hotels, retail premises like shops, and commercial property. Similar to shares, property value can rise and fall. And as well as this, investors can make money by renting or leasing the property, as well as reselling the property for a higher value. However, the value of property is not guaranteed to rise and can also be more difficult to sell than other investments. As well as these conventional forms of investment, there are also new and emerging forms of investment such as cryptocurrencies and ETFs, which are considered both extremely volatile and risky, but have the potential for huge returns. Jeremy's still going, so I'll move on to the next topic of ethical investing. Ethical investment is the strategy of seeking to consider both financial return as well as social and environmental good to bring about social change regarded as positive by proponents. It can also be referred to as social investing or green investing. Some examples of ethical considerations, which Jeremy may not agree with, but do influence most investors looking to invest in this way, include the product that a company may make, evidence of unsafe working conditions by that company, the exploitation of child labour, excess wastage, or the destruction of the environment, and there's many others to add to that list. The two most common ways of investing ethically are negative and positively screening. Negative screening involves avoiding investing in firms you believe to be unethical, whereas positive screening involves actively going to invest in companies that are involved in desirable activities. No, normally that's your investment strategy, for the more normal people, they look for desirable activities such as renewable energy or healthcare.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a weird strategy.
Are you winning?
I'm winning, actually.
That's very good.
Oh, that's a tower take. Let's go. All right, that's good. Thank you. Just got it. You'll be seeing this live gameplay. Okay, I'm under a little bit of pressure here, but
we will now move to margin lending. Margin lending is a process used by investors to buy more shares. It involves an investor borrowing 80% of the money required to buy the shares from a bank, and then they have the other 20% in their own savings account. This allows an investor to quickly expand their range of investments. For example, Jeremy wants to invest $100,000. What do you want to invest in?
What's really unethical? Coal.
For example, Jeremy wants to invest $100,000 in coal mining. He has $20,000 in his bank account and borrows $80,000 from the bank. Somehow, through his legal investments, he manages to increase his portfolio worth to $120,000. He then cashes out to give the money to his launderer and then into his bank account. So Jeremy still has to pay the bank back $80,000, which he borrowed, plus interest on the loan, but he now gets to keep the rest of the profit he made to use in his other interesting ventures.
Look, I'm not a huge fan of the whole paying money back to the bank, but anyway, that's fine.
Or the government.
Or the government, no, certainly not.
Or your employees.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's a fair one. Okay, so next topic, our economy. Now, if you happen to be some random student who's doing a test just on the our economy topic and the employment of work futures, and that test might be next Wednesday, period 1 or 3, then please listen up to this part of the video.
Great idea.
Yeah, because we're now going to be going into the topics that they may actually cover in the video.
May or may not.
Massive
thanks to Ollie who wrote this part of the script. I'm not really thanking him, I'm just pointing out that if anything's wrong, blame him instead of us.
Because there are things wrong, I can tell you that. I mean, he's called it Royal Bank of Australia.
It's pathetic.
It's the Reserve Bank. Anyway, we'll get into it. Okay, so monetary policy involves the use of interest rates to influence aspects of the economy, including aggregate demand, employment, and inflation. In Australia, this job is carried out not by the Royal Bank of Australia, but by the Reserve Bank of Australia, which is more commonly referred to as the RBA.
It's not really a common misconception.
No, it's just Ollie. So the RBA sets the cash rate, which is a starting interest rate that they offer to banks when the banks then have to borrow money from the RBA. And as this is then a lower cost of doing business for the banks, they can then lower their interest rates to consumers. That's sort of the idea. They don't really have to do it, but it's sort of what happens. So the RBA lowers their interest rates, and then the banks equally lower their interest rates, and then the consumers then have to it's easier for the consumers to borrow money because it costs them less, which means that they can then spend more, and that's the whole aggregate demand cycle there. But equally, they could raise the interest rates, which makes it more expensive to borrow money, and gives more benefits for saving money, which would then decrease aggregate demand because you lower spending and increase saving, which would then obviously shrink the economy. Expansionary monetary policy, as the name suggests, is the use of a low cash rate set by the RBA, aiming to encourage consumers to borrow more money. This will in turn cause an expansion in the economy. Currently, the RBA is using very high expansionary monetary policy to try and boost the economy back after COVID. So the cash rate is very low, currently the lowest I think it's ever been, it's 0.1%. But the RBA can also use contractionary monetary policy, which is the use of high cash rates, which then makes it harder for consumers to borrow and less likely for them to borrow, which then means that they will decrease their spending and increase their saving, because it's also better to save when it's a high interest rate. Anyway, using these two types of policy, the RBA can control things like economic growth and also employment and uninflation. Not uninflation, just inflation.
Now we'll move on to international trade and the Australian economy. Australia is an open economy, meaning that we trade goods and services with other nations. International trade affects Australia's economy in many ways, including if overseas consumers purchase our goods and services, then this injects money into the economy through exports. Overseas consumers purchasing our goods and services helps local businesses to grow and employ more people within Australia. I don't get why people start local or small businesses.
This is our local business, small businesses. That's a good point. It's actually, no, this is something that we're going to bring up just quickly. I think it's quite important. So this is something that we've thought about quite a lot, and we're announcing that Burnley David Tutors is actually a large business. So we saw this recently. It was a great piece. Why would you start a small business when large businesses are far more profitable and successful? So we've decided to start Burnley David Tutors as a large business. That's just
I think it will increase our profit by at least 100%.
It will.
On the flip side, we also see import products that cannot be produced in Australia, or at least not manufactured as efficiently, and they're imported into Australia, so we have access to them. And finally, we have imported goods that can be cheaper and therefore better for the consumer in Australia, as they have to pay less.
Yeah, well, unless you're a baller. Oh, he's obviously not, because he wrote this. So now you can see the importance of trade to the Australian economy. Yes, we fully see the importance now. But let's have a look at the trade patterns of Australia and their major global markets. So Australia's top 3 export markets are China, Japan, and Korea, obviously in the Asia-Pacific region. And the top import markets are China, the US, and Japan. So some of the top goods and services exported by Australia are iron ore, coal, and natural gas, with the largest imports for Australia are personal travel, petroleum, and vehicles.
This rise in interconnectedness of the world has led to trends of increased trade between nations, leading to increased interdependence with other nations. As can be seen with Australia, they have become highly interdependent with China and Japan through high levels of both imports and exports between the two countries. The advantage of this is ultimately economic growth and strong ties between the nations, although apparently this is falling apart with China.
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting comment from Ollie.
Yeah. It's in brackets as well. So. However, becoming too reliant on these global supply chains could come with consequences. An example of this, commonly referred to, is when large amounts of Japan's food supply became unsafe due to nuclear radiation exposure, which led to many countries relying on Japanese import food having food shortages within their own nations.
Okay, so that is enough on our economy. We're now going to look at the final topic for the year, employment and work futures. Now, if you're one of those students who happens to be doing that test on Wednesday, period 1 or 3, 50 minutes, 40 multiple choice questions, the majority of those questions are going to be on this topic. So if you weren't listening before, really listen now. All right, firstly, let's look at the workplace, types of work, and types of income. So firstly, on the types of work, there are 4 main types of employment that an individual could be. They could be employed full-time, part-time as a casual employee, or be self-employed or an independent contractor. Each of these types of work are slightly different and offer different things to employees. So we are each going to look at one of them at a time and go through that.
As opposed to looking at them all at the same time, which might have been a bit simpler. Anyway, full-time employees work 38 hours a week on average, and they earn a salary.
That's that started by?
I think that was started by Nikola Tesla.
Oh, okay.
According to my TikTok research.
From the cars?
No, the other one. They earn a salary, and that is paid. They're paid a salary, and that's a rate paid as a yearly sum, and is based on jobs completed as opposed to the number of hours they've worked. The salary doesn't change based on how much you work. They are entitled to benefits like paid annual and sick leave. So some positives of these. Firstly, they give the employee job security. They know that they're going to get those hours a week and they're going to get paid at the end of the year. And secondly, they receive benefits in the form of entitlements, which we will talk about a little bit later. In terms of negatives, firstly, there's little to no flexibility of hours, which is sort of the same as the first point of the positives, but it works both ways. And secondly, they can also receive sometimes a lower hourly rate of pay than casual employees.
So next we're going to look at part-time employees. These are very similar to full-time employees, except they work part-time. So they work less than 38 hours a week. They also receive a salary like full-time employees and receive the same benefits as full-time employees. The important thing to remember here though is that they receive all of these things on a pro rata basis, which means that they receive them proportionate to the amount of hours they worked. So they get the amount of benefits and pay based on the amount of hours they worked compared to a normal full-time employee. This is basically because it wouldn't really be fair to pay somebody the same amount and give them the same amount of leave if they only worked half the time as another employee. So some positives here is that you actually do get some flexibility in your work hours. You can choose to have a day off each week if you want to. And also there's an ability to maintain the same pay and entitlements as full-time workers, but you can work more flexibly. The negatives here is that it can be difficult to manage a schedule with other team members who may be working full-time, because say if they want to schedule a meeting, you can't do that on your day off. Finally, workers can be less invested in the business because they spend less time working there, which is less good for the employers.
Now we'll move to casuals. So casuals aren't full-time and work on an hourly basis of their choosing. They receive a wage as opposed to a salary, which is paid hourly and changes per the amount of hours they worked. They receive no entitlements of any kinds from their employers, but they receive a loading and penalty rates to make up for that. Positives, according to Oliver Huey.
No, it's according to me.
Some positives of casual work is firstly they have incredibly flexible working hours, and secondly they've got a fairly high level of hourly pay and the opportunity to work in periods where they can get penalty rates to get a bit more pay, which isn't available in the other two, or at least the first one.
No, that's absolutely correct.
And in terms of negatives, firstly there's no job security. They can just sort of fire you whenever. That's more of a message for Ollie rather than a piece of information.
Yeah.
And secondly, they don't receive any entitlements.
Finally, we have those who are self-employed, independent contractors. So self-employed people basically work for themselves. That's a good pickup.
That is exceptional work.
They can work as many or as few hours as they wish and can complete jobs when and how they wish. So they often pay themselves a salary based on their profits of their business, and they don't formally receive any entitlements, but can give themselves any things that they really want, because it's like, obviously they can choose when they want to go on leave. The positives here is that they can choose when their work is completed and how much work they do, and also how that work is done. Businesses will pay them to do a job, and so they can do it however they wish. Finally, they can choose their own pay based on how the businesses perform, and can basically fluctuate their pay based on how much they need at a certain time and how well they are performing. Finally, in terms of the negatives, there's a high level of risk and basically no job security, because if you fail, it's all on you. And so then you've got no job and no pay. And also it is very difficult to get started because starting up a business, as I've just said, has a lot of risk, and it's also a lot more difficult to get into than just having like a typical day job.
It's difficult for everyone except us.
Yeah, we started it really well.
Now we move on to the future of work. There are three main avenues where we see the future of work going. Firstly, an increased casualization of the workforce. As businesses get a lot of benefits from having a more casual working base, like avoiding paying their entitlements and being able to have their workforce fluctuate with business performance, they're looking to offer more casual positions. So it's good to see that businesses really look out for the employees more than the profit.
Like we do.
Yes.
Because we've got so much profit.
Not many employees.
No. So secondly, we see the increasing role of technology. So this is pretty easy and pretty simple.
It's pretty what?
Pretty simple. A lot of repetitive and predictable jobs, like those in manufacturing, can easily be taken over by robots. A number of businesses, however, have put a keen focus on reskilling their workers to be more employable in a changing workforce, which is very nice of them.
And thirdly and finally, we have increased participation of women in the workforce. Equally, as societal attitudes towards women have changed, there has been an increase in the number of women participating in the workforce.
Yeah, so there's a lot of more things that are changing about the workforce, but these are just some nice, easy ones.
I'm going to do just two each here.
Yeah, okay, so we're just going to do, now we're going to look at the rights and responsibilities of employers and employees in the workforce. We're going to start off with employers, and I actually don't think we're going to talk about employees, but they're pretty easy. It's the employee's responsibility to fulfill proper directions, legitimate directions from the employer,
North,
and
east,
basically
south,
basically just do what they're told. Okay, so we're going to look at the NES, or the National Employment Standards, which are the responsibilities of the employer, and these are minimum standards, so it's like they have to do this. So firstly, there's the maximum weekly hours of work. This is 38 hours per week plus any reasonable additional hours. So this means that businesses can't just like make their employees work all day.
No business should do
No,
that.
no. Okay, and then secondly, we have requests for flexible working arrangements. So certain employees can ask to change their working arrangement to say get time off at pick up and drop off if they need to pick up and drop off their kids.
Next is parental leave and related entitlements. So mothers and fathers,
Yes.
I believe, entitled to up to 12 months unpaid leave and the right to ask for an extra 12 months unpaid leave if they have a child, but it also includes parents who have adopted a child and they also get this same leave. Fourthly, workers are entitled to annual leave. So this is 4 weeks of paid leave per year, plus an additional weekend for some shift workers.
Next, we have personal/carers/compassionate leave and also family and domestic violence leave, which has recently been added on. So this is 10 days paid leave per year, but this is also given on a pro rata basis for part-time employees. There's 2 days of unpaid carers leave also provided, and also 2 days of compassionate leave as required. And there is also 5 days of unpaid family and domestic violence leave in a 12-month period. We then have community service leave, which means that employees are allowed to take unpaid leave for voluntary emergency activities and leave for jury service with an entitlement to be paid for up to 10 days for jury service.
Next, we have long service leave. So this is paid leave for employees who have been with the same employer for a long time. So it sort of just rewards loyalty rather than punishing disloyalty. And then next is public holidays. So workers are entitled to a paid day off on a public holiday. It's unpaid for casuals, but that is except where it's reasonably requested for them to work on that day.
Sure. Next, we have the notice of termination and redundancy pay. So this means that up to 5 weeks notice of termination must be given, and up to 16 weeks of redundancy pay may be given as well, both based on the length of an individual's service. Finally, we have, and this one's quite an important one, the provision of a Fair Work Information Statement. So the Fair Work Information Statement, which is basically a statement telling employees what they can and can't do and what their rights and responsibilities are in the workforce, must be presented to them. Finally, we have casual conversion. So this is the right for casual employees to become permanent employees. And the ruling on this very recently by the Fair Work Commission was that all casual employees, and if you're a casual employee out there and you're interested in this, maybe take them up on it. But all casual employees who work regular and systematic hours for the course of over 12 months may request to switch to being a part-time or full-time, basically a permanently employed employee at their particular business, and the business can only deny that request on reasonable business grounds.
Now we'll move to the final little sub-point of this video, which is employment contracts. So there are 3 types of employment contracts to be aware of. These are modern awards, enterprise agreements, and common law contracts. So firstly, modern awards are a document that sets out the minimum terms and conditions of employment. And this is on top of the National Employment Standard, which we just beautifully read out.
Yeah.
It is used to protect workers in an entire industry, and it's beneficial because it provides entitlements such as pay, hours of work, breaks, and overtime. However, its disadvantage is that it applies to the entire industry and therefore is not flexible between businesses, and you can't really change it to your benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we have an enterprise agreement, which is a collective bargaining agreement in which wages and salaries and working conditions are negotiated at the level of industrial organisations compared to previously the whole industry. So this is where an actual business itself will create one of these agreements, often in consultation with a group of employees or a trade union. So it provides advantages such as empowering the employees to be more involved in the bargaining process, and ensures that the worker is better off, because something that's very important about an enterprise agreement, because it's specific to the company, it can trump what is said in the modern award, but it needs to pass the boot or better off overall test, which means that employees who are then put under an enterprise agreement as opposed to a modern award must be better off than they would have been under the modern award. And one of its disadvantages is that there's greater levels of inequity in pay between employees. As the award sets out a minimum base rate of pay for everybody, this allows for different levels of pay for different people.
And finally, a common law contract is an agreement between an employer and an employee, where the employee agrees to perform work for the employer in exchange for monetary or other compensation. It's normally used in higher up jobs, and it's beneficial as it provides clarity for all parties to understand the terms of the contract. It also minimises the potential for litigation and liability for the company, and it's also just generally more specific for the two parties involved, which is often better for both parties. However, its detriments are that the contracts can take up a lot of time and money to write, and also circumstances could change, meaning the original terms of the contract are no longer applicable. Well, that is all we've got for you on this lovely overview of the full Year 10 course. We did the full Year 9 earlier, as Jeremy said.
Maybe the full Year 11 course.
Maybe next year, because they have a really strong commerce course.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed the video. As always, don't fully rely on this video while...
It's all perfect. It's all perfect.
Except for the parts that Ollie wrote.
Yes.
But yeah, do your own study. Do some practice papers if they're available at whatever school you go for. This is not specific. And yeah, what else do I normally say?
I don't know, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, it was actually good fun to make. Sorry it's been so long. So thank you all. We'll see you next time, and goodbye.
Goodbye.